Good morning. We're just finishing the davening. So
Okay, I'll catch up. I'm still having breakfast.
okay.
Cozy here this morning.
Yeah. Steve, can I get a ride back home tomorrow with you? Okay. I just want
Are we supposed to turn on the air conditioning or?
to, should be on.
To be on, okay.
Supposed to be on. I'll just go and speak to you. Sure.
Old stuff you can make.
Morning.
Good morning.
So Erwin, how many people generally Good night.
Was, I mean, you know.
Okay. I'm going to start the sponsors and then we'll go right into the daf. Okay? All right, the year,
No,
not this morning. Year of learning, check if he's in the 8:30 million. Sue and Arnie Gerlich in memory of Malcolm Perman and Philip Mann. Yisrael David Ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch. Tzvi Hirsch, Adia Bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam Bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel Bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom Ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov Ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel Ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Marsha Federbush and family in memory of her husband, Dr. Uriel Paul Federbush, Uriel Pinchas Ben Harav Shimon, Sharon and Fred Lisker, their family and many friends in memory of her dear mom, Harriet Friedman El Bas Yaakov, Leslie and Gail Kaplan in memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Sedell, Irving and Pearl Kaplan, friends of Avi Gidler, Ava Meir Ben Shimon and Martha Gidler, Charna Bat Yeshaya, children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of Toby Paris, Toba Bat Yisrael Dov in her memory, friends of Malka Levy, Malka Bat Yosef, friends of Joe Wolf, Yosef Ben Chaim, Charlie Gelfenstein and Sam Levine in memory of Ramona Levine, Rachel Mata Bat Asher. Month of Learning by Gary and Marcia Schrager in memory of his father, David Ben Yosef, and his mother, Freda Bas Handel. Dov Budlander in memory of his parents, Tzvi Ben Yaakov Yitzchak Bela Drash Bas Harav Dober, and his in-laws, Yehuda Tzvi Ben David Nachum, and Al-Tehai Yosef. Malin, his father, Reverend Ben Ze'ev. Okay, so that's it.
Amen.
Okay. All right. Sid did not come in this morning. Okay. All right.
Leah must have tired him out.
What?
Leah must have tired him out.
I told him yesterday, when I talked about Pirchei Kahuna,
Yeah.
in English, what do you call the Pirchei Kahuna? CITs, Kohanim in training. Okay, so he liked that. He thought that was cute. Okay, so I want us to go back to Nun Gimel Amud Beis, very bottom. All right. Okay, we're arguing there about what's with this shofar blowing. Okay, and who, what, this, was it one sound? Was it multiple sounds? Each one mitzvah, multiple mitzvahs, things like that. Okay, and I wanted just to finish up the Atav Rabbanan Simanahu, right? He snuck into the other room, right? Barachamana Shavya Mitzvah. And the rabbis considered it not only a sign, a signal, but a mitzvah. Kimanazla Hada Amar Rav Kahana. So according to whose opinion did they follow Rav Kahana? Ein bein tkiya l'trua v'lo klum. Okay, that there was going to be no separation, right? No pause between them. Okay, Kaman, according to whom? Rabbi Yehuda. Right. Just like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda Pshita. And if it's Rabbi Yehuda, he says that's obvious. Okay, so he says that Rav Kahana's view follows Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemara picks up on Nun Dalet, which is our Amud for today, right? Mahu Detema. Okay, you might have said as follows. Even like Ma Teshet Kyotot Yatsa. Okay, in other words, there could be. They didn't all have to be the tkiyas all at one time. You could have heard some one part of the day, some part, the other part of the day, things like that, right? And then you would still be Yotzei. Kamash Malan comes to teach us, all right? And what is he coming to teach us then? That's his view. Now, says the Gemara. Ve'ema. Okay, all right? So Hachinami here too. We could say Im Kain, Mai Velo Klum. Why then did our Mishnah say it's like nothing? Right? In other words, why say that the Rav Kahana mentions this point that there should be no pause whatsoever? Right? Okay. So the answer is he's keeping with the view of Rabbi Yehuda, that it was all a single mitzvah. Okay. Erev Shabbat. Okay, so the next piece in our next piece in our Mishnah, Erev Shabbat Shabbatochacha. Okay. Remember we got to how many, there was this number, back and forth. How many of the how many shofar sounds were there? So they were arguing. Right? Okay, so what happens? So the Gemara says, "Ve'elu lamala," right? Ve'elu lamala asirit. So if we were talking again about the 10th step, lo katani, okay, but it's not what it's teaching. Matnit mani, then our mission would be according to whom? Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Maybe it's according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Morning, Tanya, who taught in a Braita. Okay. I think they're more shares, right? Okay. All right, the taught in a Braita. Shalosh lemala asirit. Okay, what does he mean, shalosh lemala asirit? Okay, Art Scroll wants to say 3 blasts were sounded on the 10th step, okay? To say that. And remember we saw, just picking up, the question was it starting from the top and you went down 10 steps? Or was it starting, okay, so, or were you starting from the bottom and you went up 10 steps? Okay. So what happens? Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, Shalosh al Gabe Hamizbeach. He disagreed. And he said, no, the 3 sounds were done when they were pouring the Nisuch Hamayim on the Mizbeach itself, and not when they walked up or down the steps there. Okay? Ha'omer lamala asirit, eino omer al gav Mizbeach. The one who says that it was on the 10th step doesn't say they pour it, they sound when they pour on the Mizbeach. V'ha'omer al gav ha'mizbeach eino omer lamala asirit. And the one who says they sound the 3 blasts when they're doing the Nisuch Hamayim on the Mizbeach, that one does not say they do it on the 10th step. Okay. My Tama the Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So what was his reasoning? Kevan de taka l'ptichat sha'arim, since they sounded the shofar at the opening of the gates. Lema'ale asirit lamali de taka. Why then would it be necessary, I'm going to phrase it that way, to sound these trumpets on the 10th step? Right? Hi, love shaharhu. Didn't they just sound it, right, when they open the gates to bring the water through? Okay, and that's what I'm going to say, whether not at the first thing in the morning, but when they brought the container, okay, right, in with the water from Siloam. Hilkach al gav hamizbeach adif. Therefore, it's preferable that they sound the trumpets when they pour the Nisuch Hamayim on the Mizbeach. Okay? V'Rabbanan savre, but the rabbis seem to be of the opinion, kevan detaka lemilui Hamayim, since they sounded trumpets when they first filled the utensil with water from the Siloam, right, from Mei Shiloah, right? Al gav hamizbeach lamali. Why then would it be necessary to sound the trumpet blasts when they poured the water on the altar? Hilkach lema'ala ahasirit adif. Therefore, their argument was that as part of the procession, before, if you sounded it when you first got the water, which is prior to coming into the Azara and going through the gate, therefore, likewise, you follow the procedure of sounding the trumpets when you're up on the steps before you actually then go into the area of the Mizbeach and pour it on the Mizbeach. So that's the parallel I'm making to help us understand this difference, okay? So what happens? Ki ata Rav Acha bar Chanina midroma. Okay, when he came, Rav Acha, okay, he came from the south. In other words, he came from south of Eretz Yisrael. Okay, what did he say? He did the following. Aite matnita biyadeh. He brought a Mishnah, a brisa, okay, with him. Okay, ubnei Aharon hakohanim yitka'u b'chatzotzrot. Okay, that the Kohanim would sound these trumpets, right? She'ein Talmud lomar yitka'u shekvar ne'amar etchatem b'chatzotzrot al alotechem va'al zivchei shalmechem. Okay, this writer, he seems to be teaching that when they would sound, right, these trumpets, right, these blasts, right, what's the implication? right? What is the point? Okay, that it doesn't have to be said that that's when you blow it, because it's already, in a sense, part of the procedure. Okay, because it says elsewhere yitka'u, that they will sound. Shekvar ne'amar, again, citing the pasuk that already says, the teacher says, utekatem b'chatzotzrot al olotechem ba'al zivchei shalmechem, that you say it when you do the offerings, which would seem to imply that what? That you would do it when you poured it on the mizbeach, because that would be a lot closer to when they do an olah, okay, or shlamim. Right? Ma Talmud lomar yitka'u. So therefore, why do we say that the pasuk tells us that they will blow? Hakol lefi hamusafin tokin. He argues that therefore, what is the point? That it has to be according to when they do the musaf, the additional part of the service. That's when they say.
Because the verse only says, "Olo seichem v'zibche sham
Shalmechem.
shamechem." It doesn't say chappus, and korban musa is basically a chappus.
Okay, good point. Hu tanela v'hu amarla. He taught this and he explained it. Lomar shatokim al kol musaf umusaf tnan. Therefore, it comes to teach us that it should be sounding on each individual musaf, each individual musaf offering. Okay, so what happens now? We come back again to a new piece from our Mishnah. Erev Shabbat, Shabbatoch HaChag. Okay, now we're talking about Shabbos Chol HaMoed, right? Okay, during Sukkot. Hayu Sham Arba'im V'Shmona, claiming that there were 48 trumpet blasts on that Erev Shabbos. Ve'im ita, okay, if that's the case, so to speak, litne, why don't they teach it? Shabbat Shabbatoch HaChag Mishkachat La Chamshin Ve'echad, that on that Shabbos, right in the middle of the holiday, okay, that there should be 51. Okay, so the question is going to get, where does he suddenly get, instead of 48, 51? Right?
Because he said before, "I'll call musaf umusaf." So Shabbos Chol HaMoed, you have musaf of Yontiv
And
musaf
Musaf
of
of
Shabbos. So
Shabbos.
you would go on each
You got-
one, and that's
what the
additional.
Gemara is going to tell us.
Right.
Right, surely. Amar Rabbi Zera. So Rabbi Zera says as follows. Lefisha ein tokin lepetichat sha'arim b'Shabbat. His explanation is on when they come into the gates, that while that they sound trumpet blasts on a normal day for that to open the gates, they don't do that on Shabbos, right? So what happens? Amar Rava. Okay, Rava wants to give a slightly different explanation. Man ha delo chash lekimcha. Okay, this is a unique expression in the Gemara. It's like somebody saying they're not watching the pot. Okay,
Yeah.
all right, or they don't.
the store.
Yeah,
Who's
who's
watching
watching
the
the store? In other words, you're not paying attention to what's going on here. That's basically how we would sort of translate that phrase. Okay, chada. On the one hand, the bechol yom tana. Our Mishnah said clearly that they do it each day, whether it's a weekday or Shabbos. Okay. Secondly, va'od, and furthermore, inami kehadade minhu. All right, that these things were one followed after the other. Okay. Litne, so let him teach as follows. Shabbat Shabbatoch HaChag, that if it's the Shabbos Chol HaMoed in the middle of Sukkot, Hayu Sham Arba'im Ushmona, that there would be 48 blasts. D'shamat mina tarti, that we would therefore learn two things. One, Shamat Mina, the Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. We would learn what Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov wants to teach us. That it sounded when it's poured on the altar.
No, the 10th step. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov was the one who said by the 10th step. Ma'alas years.
Okay, what was it? Ushamat Mina the Rabbi Achabar Chanina, and that it was sounded for each Musa. Okay. Ela Amar Rava, says Rava. Lafi she'ein tokin lemilui mayim b'Shabbat. And his answer, according to Rava, was that which set did they omit? They omitted the set when they filled up the utensil with the water. So one view was they omit a set at one time. Another was they omitted a set at a different time. But either way, by omitting one set, they're simply, I'm going to use the word, replacing it with a different set. Okay, so that's what's happening. So that would still ideally wind up with the number of 48. So where still do we get the extra number? Okay, so his answer, so the Gemara then tells us, all right? He said, Lafi she'ein tokin lemilui mayim b'Shabbat, dibratzrei tova. Why? Because we say that it is fewer, it's less. Okay, let's go on. So the Gemara then again says, Velitne nami. So if you use that example of Shabbos, Erev Shabbos Chol HaMoed Sukkos, are there other examples that the Gemara might present, okay, where there would be a change in this number? Okay?
Where you would get the maximum number.
Okay, well, if the maximum number is 48.
Okay, right, so this would be a case.
So can we see other examples?
Right.
So here, let's see if Gemara is going to present some and if we're going to accept the rationale. Velitne nami, so let him also teach us another example. Rosh Hashanah shechaliot b'Shabbat. Okay, the example being, okay, something where we have Rosh Hashanah that starts, okay, and occurs on Shabbat. Daha ika tlata musafin, because there we have an example of 3 separate musaf offerings. One for Rosh Hashanah, one for Shabbos, and a third one would be for the Rosh Chodesh. Right. Okay. And the Gemara tells us, Musaf to Rosh Hashanah is 1, Musaf to Rosh Chodesh is 2, and Musaf to Shabbat is 3. Okay.
Now we come to 48, because 21 normally every day, and 27 is 48.
So that would get you back to your number of 20. By the way, that would also disagree with the view, okay? However, that would be against the view that we blow for each Musa.
This is the view that we blow for each Musa. This is in accordance with that view.
Well, we'll see for a second. We'll see. So Erev Shabbat, Shabbatocha Chag, Itztarich Le, La'ashme'inin K'da Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Okay, so the Gemara says, why didn't they use, okay, you're right. Why didn't they use that example? I'm mixing my notes here. Why did they use the example of Chol HaMoed, Shabbos, and Sukkos, and not the example of Rosh Hashanah? There, okay, so the answer would be, they use that example of Chol HaMoed Sukkos to be able to teach the view of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yaakov, okay, in terms of that view regarding blowing for Musa. And that would be against the view of Rabbi Eliezer. Okay? Since then, Mi Kamar Litneha Velo Litneha. So based on who is it then that chose to teach one example, namely the example of Chol HaMoed, Shabbos, and Sukkos, as opposed to choosing the example of Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos? Why choose one example as opposed to the other? Okay, that's our Gemara's question, right? Litneha v'litneha. Let him teach both examples. Okay, we'll still get to the number of 48 either way to show us that we don't have any more than 48 blasts, okay, at one time. So the Gemara's answer is, okay, Tana v'shier. They taught it and he omitted it. In other words, he didn't give all of the potential examples, just threw out one example. Okay. My shi'er, the high shi'er. So what then do we say that he omitted? Okay, right? He omitted that one, shi'er erev hapesach. Okay, he also omitted another possible example, which was erev Pesach. Why? Because erev Pesach, when they brought the korban Pesach, they blew when they recited Hallel along with it. Okay, so you would have for each shift of doing the korban Pesach, you would have Hallel and sounding of trumpets. And theoretically, I'm going to say there were 3 shifts. Okay, so that would be 3 blasts per Hallel with each shift. Okay, having 3 Hallels. That would give you 3 times 9 is 27. So let's go over now to Amud Beis, Nun Dalet Amud Beis. Imi Shum Erev HaPesach. If we had used that example, he says, Lav Shiurahu. Okay, that's not really a leaving out an omission. Dahamani, because according to whom? Rabbi Yehuda. That's the view of Rabbi Yehuda. Da'amar miyamehem shalkat shlishit. Lo higia lomar ahavti ki yishma Hashem mipnei shahayu amah muatim. Okay, he's arguing therefore that they really never got to finish the 3rd shift, so to speak. So they never really blew a 3rd cycle there of trumpet blasts. What? Whatever it was, right? That there was only one set of blasts in that case. So they only really got up to 42 in that situation and not 48. Okay. Ha'okimna. But here we established, namely, the Loka Rabbi Yehuda, that it wasn't according to the view of Rabbi Yehuda. V'dilma hai Tana savar lekvate. But maybe we're going to say that this Tana was of the same opinion with him, bechada, in one situation, upaliga le bechada, and he disagreed with him in another case. Ella, rather, let's explain it this way, says the Gemara. My shi'er, the high shi'er, what is it that he omitted? That we say that he could have possibly omitted? Shi'er erev haPesach shechal liot be'erev Shabbat. Okay, that he omitted erev Pesach coming out on erev Shabbos. Apik sheet va'eyel sheet. He would eliminate 6. In other words, the soundings from the 3rd shift of korban Pesach, right? But he would add. Instead, replace it, I'm going to say really, not add. He would replace it really with another 6. And those were the 6 to tell us it was Friday. And that was Erev Shabbos. And we saw before that they did 3 to tell people to stop work. And then another 3 that Shabbos was actually started. Okay? So that's the point that we start there. Okay. Now, a new piece again from our Mishnah. Ve'ein nosifin al memchet. We said, the Mishnah told us we don't add more than 48. Velo, asks the Gemara. Really? No? Okay. V'ha'ika erev ha'pesach shechaliot b'Shabbat. But don't we have the case, right, where we say that we have erev Pesach, right, that starts on Shabbos, okay, where we would have 21 daily, 9 in Shabbat for Musaf, 9 for Hallel, and each of the 2 shifts we would have 3. Okay, question of the 3rd shift, right? So that would give us a lot more, right? The Ila Reb Yehuda, Chamshin V'chada, we'd wind up with 51. Ila Rabbanan, and if it was rabbis, Chamshin V'sheva, we'd wind up with 57, because the rabbis would require for the 3rd shift of Erev Pesach during the Kabbalas, they would require a whole nother set. Okay, and that would be the reason. Okay, that they would get that number. Ki katani midi da'ite b'chol shana. No, what's the answer? The Tana was teaching that which normally occurs on a regular yearly basis, right? Erev HaPesach, shekol liot b'Shabbat, delite b'chol shana v'shana lo katani. But a situation where you have Erev Pesach that comes out on Shabbos, that doesn't come on a normal basis. It's unique. And remember, we often say the rabbis do not make certain rules on extraordinary situations. So what happens? Atu Erev Shabbos. Okay, since then, the Gemara says, hold on a second. You say it doesn't, they don't refer to extraordinary situations. Well, what about the following example the Gemara is going to ask? Atu Erev Shabbat, Shabbatoch Chag. Okay? Okay. Mi'ise b'chol shana. Do we say then that that occurs every year when you have, okay, that that's the case? Zimnin de lo mishkachat le. At times we say that that's not the case. So what then are you trying to tell us? Right? Kigon shechal yom tov rishon be'erev Shabbat. Okay? The situation might be that you have the first day of the holiday on erev Shabbos. Ki makleinen yom tov rishon be'erev Shabbat midchei dechaninim le. Okay? When that occurs, what do we say? We tend to put it off. My tama, kevan de'ikla yom tov rishon shel chag, v'yot be'erev Shabbat, v'yom ha'kippurim. Okay, and as far as Yom Kippur would be concerned, a madhave bechad b'Shabbat. You would have a situation, he says, that basically the end result would be you could have Shabbos and Yom Kippur come out on a Sunday, and you'd have 2 days of very stringent practices, which would be very difficult. Okay? Hilkach dechaninen lei, therefore we put it off, right? So the Gemara asks then, Umi dechaninen lei, do we really put it off? Vahatnan, but haven't we been taught as follows? Chelvei Shabbat krivin b'yom ha'kippurim, that the fat offerings that were left over from Shabbos, if the next day was Yom Kippur, they could be offered on Yom Kippur.
You see Yom Kippur comes out.
Right, so it's possible to say you could have a situation where now it's not true today, by the way.
No.
Okay, because when they fix the calendar mathematically, they arrange that shouldn't happen. Okay, but remember, we're talking about a time when they still based adjustment of the calendar on visual sighting. Okay, so what happens? Va'amar Rabbi Zera, he have.
You're saying in the calendar that we use now, Yom Kippur won't fall on Sunday?
Won't come out on Sunday or Friday.
Right.
Sunday or Friday.
Right. Okay, so what happens? So he says, Va'amar Rabbi Zera, ki havinen be Rab Bavel. This is an interesting sidelight that I'm going to just quickly point out. We talk about the fact that there were different customs in Bavel than Eretz Yisrael. Okay, well, the one most familiar to many of us is the difference in the Torah reading practice. Okay, versus a year cycle versus a 3-year cycle. Okay, but this piece of Gemara, historically, I think is significant, is it's going to tell us, okay? Rabbi Zera is telling us, when we were students in the academy in Babylonia, Hava Amre, they used to tell us as follows, Ha Ditanya, here, okay, it's taught, right, the following in a Braita, Yom HaKippurim Shechal Liot Erev Shabbat, okay, that when Yom Kippur came out on a Friday, Lo Hayu Tokim, okay, they did not sound the shofar. In other words, the trumpets. They didn't do that afternoon or early
the
3 and the
stop
3.
work.
Right, they didn't do that, right? Not only that, Ubamotz a Shabbat, Lo Hayu Mavdilim, okay, that they didn't do Havdalah then. Divrei Hakolhi. And that was the view of everybody. Then he tells us, Ki Slikit Lahatam, when I ascended to there, namely to Eretz Yisrael, right? Ishkachate, the Rabbi Yehuda Berei, the Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi. I found, okay, Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi, Diyati v'kamar Rabbi Akiva, okay? And he said, well, that was the practice of Rabbi Akiva. Lo kasha, okay? And it's not problematic. Why? Ha Rabbanan, ha achirim. One was the practice of the rabbis, and one was the practice of others. Now, some of us may have learned that achirim generally refers to Rabbi Meir, okay? But in this case, I'm going to suggest that it referred to another group, not just of rabbis, that was large enough to indicate that there were different minhagim in different places. Okay? Okay? Ha-achirim Detanya. Okay? Because we have a text then that tells us, achirim omrim ein bein atzeret la'atzeret. There is no difference between atzeret, Shavuot, in 1 year to the next year. Ve'ein bein Rosh Hashanah, the Rosh Hashanah. And there's no difference between Rosh Hashanah, the date of Rosh Hashanah in 1 year to the following year, right? Ela arba'a yamim bilvad, except for 4 days. Okay? Ve'im haita shana me'uberet chamisha. And if it was a year where it was a leap year, then maybe there would be 5 days difference. Okay? Meitive. But now we're going to challenge this. Rosh Chodesh Shechaliyot b'Shabbat. Okay? If we have the new month starting on Shabbos, Shir Shel Rosh Chodesh Doche Shir Shel Shabbat. Okay? We say that the psalm recited for Rosh Chodesh puts off, in other words, replaces, it would seem to say, the psalm for Shabbos.
Could it also mean precedes?
Well, that's what we're going to raise the question. Good point. Baruch shekivanta, Marv. Right? Ve'ita, if that's the case, says the Gemara, lema de Shabbat, ve'lema de Rosh Chodesh. Let's say the one for Shabbos and say the one for Rosh Chodesh. Why, right? Why might we think that the case? And we're going to see that in a moment. All right. Amar Rav Safra, mai doche. What then do you mean when you say it puts it off? Right? Doche lekadem. It means it puts it in order of precedent. In what order you say it? Okay. Va'amai, on what basis? And here we see a principle that is very common. Tadir she'eno tadir, tadir kodem. That which is more frequent, that which is less frequent, the more frequent takes precedence. Okay? So that clearly is stated. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yochanan, Leida.
No, that's actually a kasha. He said that Rosh Chodesh should come first, and the more is asking a kasha, Tadar Shena Tadar Kodem. Shabbos comes more often than Rosh Chodesh. Shabbos should come first. That's the Gemara's kasha.
Okay, well, all right. They didn't show that as a kasha in the text. Okay, so what happens?
Amai is Amai the Gemara's
Well,
why.
Why? That's the debate. See, that's how I understood it. Why? What's the issue?
Right.
Okay, tadir v'shino, tadir kodem. Don't we say what takes precedent comes first?
Right.
If that's the case, then we would ask, shouldn't the Shabbos Sam come before the Rosh Chodesh Sam?
Right.
Okay. Amar Rabbi Yochanan leida shehu kvar Rosh Chodesh b'zmano. So his answer, Rabbi Yochanan, is to tell us that this indicates that Rosh Chodesh was fixed at the correct time, at the appropriate time. That's why you're saying it first,
right,
to tell those present. Okay. So my question when I was looking at this is, well, what about those who aren't present? Okay, aren't there in the room? Okay. Vahai hakera avdinan do. So now we have the following shayla. And is this really an appropriate sign, an appropriate way of recognizing that Rosh Chodesh was fixed appropriately? Ha-hekera acharita avdina. But we have other examples of showing that Rosh Chodesh was fixed appropriately. The Tanya, as it taught, Chelvei tamid shel shachar nitnin mechatzi keves ulamata b'mizbarach. V'shel musafin nitnin mechatzi keves ulamata b'ma'arav. Namely, that when certain offerings were brought up, okay, and they were gotten ready, okay, so the people in the Azara, they could see what was going on the Mizbeach, all right, they were gathered there, and they would see some offerings were put on one side, some offerings were put on another side, okay, so that's the point. That's right. So he said this was the sign, right? That there was a sign that, okay, the Chalvei Tamid, those portions of the daily offering for the morning were put Mechatzi Kevesh Ulamata b'Mizrach, on the eastern side of the ramp. V'shel Musafin, those of Rosh Chodesh, okay, that were for the Rosh Chodesh occasion, Nitnan Mechatzi Kevesh Ulamata b'Ma'arav, and they were put on the right, west side of the ramp and below. V'shel Rosh Chodesh, and here's we get the clinch. And those specific offerings that were designated for Rosh Chodesh, nitnin tachet karkuv hamizbeach ulamat, and they were put, okay, below the karkuv, below the ledge, below the soveh, okay, below and below. So let's just go over a tiny bit, okay, onto Nun Hey, Va'amar Rabbi Yochanan, okay, and Rabbi Yochanan then says, Leida, Shehu Kvar Rosh Chodesh Bizmano. So that then tells them people would then see the different locations of the offerings, right? And then we would know, right? Oh, yeah. Okay, then they would know that Rosh Chodesh was set at the appropriate time. So the Gemara, we're going to finish up. Okay, Trey Hekera Avdinan. If there were two, then signs, symbols, whatever, of dinan, the chazi high chazi, the chazi bahai chazi. That there's some would be able to see this one, some would be able to see that one, and that's how they would know that Rosh Chodesh was fixed for its time. Our practice, of course, is that we still really do follow Tadir, Velo Tadir, Tadir Kodeh. Okay, in that case. All right, so we'll stop right there and we'll pick up tomorrow. All right. By the way, well, Bob, before you go real quick, I want to announce we're set with Century Grill on Wednesday at 4:30.
Wednesday, September 1st.
Wednesday, September 1st. At 4:30, you need to let me know so I can give a number to Avi how many people are coming. Okay, so either text me, call me, yell at me. Okay, all right, let me know.
Speak nice to people.
All right. Okay. All right.
Tell Mordecai did what he's supposed to. Thank you.
What?
I can tell Mordecai did what I supposed to.
No.